Welcome to the day after talking Duck sports. And yeah, so we had a couple games this week in basketball, and then we had a football game on Saturday. So let's go ahead and start talking about it. All right, so the new look Oregon Duck basketball team played UC Riverside, Montana, came away with a couple of wins there, getting settled. Man, I really like this team. They look really fun. They look like they're playing together, and they look like Dana has the ability to get these guys playing like they did last year. They could go a long way. I think they have really good depth, and I'm excited to see how they do, how they build this season. So far, so good. Got two games, two wins. They played Portland and then Troy next week, and then they got Oregon State and number 13 Texas A&M. That's going to be a huge game and a giant test for this new look Duck basketball team, and hopefully Dana has got them ready. Because number 13 Texas A&M, that's going to be very, very exciting to watch. But that's just early in the season, so make sure you're supporting them and watching them. And we're going to move on here, and man, let's talk some football. So, how many of you Oregon Duck fans are super happy that Mario Cristobal is not the coach at Oregon? Because I know I am. I was not upset to see him leave when he did, and I thank God for the hire of Dan Lanning at Oregon, because as I've said and continue to say, and will say year after year after year, is Mario Cristobal will always lose one or two games, and he'll always lose one or two games against teams that he shouldn't, and that's just the story of him as a head coach. It's happened at Oregon. It's happening at Miami year after year. It is what it is. He's going to coach, or he's going to lose against a team that he shouldn't. So, I don't know if this loss to Georgia Tech puts them out of the playoffs. I think it might, though. I think it might push Miami out of the playoffs unless they can beat SMU in their conference title game. I think that might be the only way Miami gets to the 12-team playoff with this loss. I think they drop significantly in the polls, and I think that you have still got BYU undefeated, and you have Army undefeated. I think you're looking at some other teams that will be getting in other than Miami, because at that point it'd be a 2-loss Miami after losing to SMU, and I just don't think that that they'll be in that playoff if they lose to SMU. I think they'll win out from here. I think they'll get to SMU, and from what I've seen from SMU, I don't see Miami beating SMU. And I think SMU gets the automatic bid, and I think ACC only gets one team in. So, with that said, we got the number 1 Oregon against the low in the Big Ten standings Maryland team. And this game, I don't think went as maybe people expected it to go. The score of 39-18. I think this game was closer than that. I think it just felt closer than that to me. And I think Oregon's 18 points in the second half really showed the difference of the talent once Oregon settled down. I thought early in this game, Oregon played very uncharacteristically unfocused. It reminded me kind of the first few games of the year with the excessive penalties and the false starts, and it was just not a great showing for Oregon. A little bit of adversity late in the season I know the Oregon's suffering from some injuries, and I'm not sure if that's what it was. I'm honestly don't know what the factors of this was. It seemed a little odd. Oregon has preached, it's always Oregon against Oregon. We're not looking at the particular opponent or whatever. But I think maybe this game that the players didn't take Maryland seriously enough. It was just a very unfocused game. I'm not really sure what that's about, but I'm sure there will be some serious discussions in the team conferences this week with Dan Lanning. But yeah, goddamn fly in here. All right, so let's take a look at this. So we got 19 first downs for both teams. We got third down efficiency, 6 of 15 for Oregon and 7 of 19 for Maryland. Fourth down efficiency, 1 of 2 for Maryland and 2 of 3 for Oregon. Rushing yards, Oregon has 180 rushing yards. Oregon holds Maryland under 83 rushing, or under 100 rushing yards with 83. But Maryland's not really a running team, so I'm not super surprised by that. Passing yards. Oregon ends up with 183 passing yards to Maryland's 206. And that's where I'm a little surprised. I think that's probably well under Maryland's average at 206. Yards per game, 289 for Maryland, 363 for Oregon. Sacks. Oregon had 2 sacks. And then, why does it say 2 sacks? Anyway. Interceptions thrown. Oregon nabs 2 interceptions off of Edwards. Let's see. Penalty yards. Man, both teams, though, right? Maryland has 9 penalties for 75 yards, and Oregon has 12 penalties for 95 yards. And I think 12 is probably the most this year, if I remember right. I think last time 10 and 11 was probably the high. 12, that's a lot. And a lot of those were pass interference. I think they had 4, maybe 5 pass interference calls. And they were all warranted. I'm not gonna lie and say that they it was ticky tacky. Like, the pass interference calls that I saw were all clearly pass interference. And I don't know what. I mean, it's always better to give up penalty than the long, huge touchdown pass. But I don't know. Oregon needs to clean that up a little bit. I don't know that was indicative of the Oregon secondary. I felt like most of the time that they were mostly in position, but there were definitely a few times when they were beat and they just held on and prevented the thing. And hey, your defense is really good. You have a really good chance to hold people to 3 instead of 7. I don't necessarily mind those penalties. But I would like to see them be in better position instead of having to make those penalties. So I don't know that they get punished for that, but the false starts, that other stuff, that definitely needs to get cleaned up because those are drive killers. And then the personal foul. So I don't know. Yes, it killed the drive. Yes, Oregon needed it. So it was definitely not a smart play, but I think that that was, for me, that was a late hit on Dylan, and I think the referees maybe were not calling that, maybe caused that penalty. I think if that penalty would have been called, I don't think you would have seen the retaliation. But in the end, it's hard to fault the guy for sticking up your quarterback. You just like to see him do it in a different way and not hurt the drive like they did. All right. Oregon again has trouble with a early punt return with Tez out. That's really kind of hurting this special teams. I don't know what the deal is all of a sudden where they're struggling with those kicks. But they'll get it figured out. I'm sure they'll practice a lot on that lately. Time of possession, man. Maryland just owned that time of possession, 32-49. The Ducks forced them into long, methodical drives every time, and that's really what prevented them from scoring most of the time. So, all right, let's take a look at these individual stats. You got Dylan Gabriel goes 23 of 34. Not his best game, but I think Oregon started with maybe like, I think the first 10 passes, there was like six drops. And that was just not good. Not good at all. I don't know what the deal was, because Dylan was putting it on there. Terrence Ferguson had like 3 or 4 straight drops right in a row. Sometimes you have those adversity games where things just aren't going your way and you just have to overcome them and get through it. Hopefully that is this game for Oregon, and from here on out, they're more focused and do what they got to do. But Dylan has 183 yards, 5.4 average, and 3 TDs, and becomes the NCAA touchdown leader overall with, I think it's 178 or something like that. And so here's the other aspect of it. Everybody says, oh yeah, but Keenum did it quicker. Dylan's played so much longer and so many more games. It's actually only a 2-game difference. Dylan Gabriel does have 2 more games, but it's still fairly close. Not within, it's not like it's like he played the whole season and had 10 extra games or something like that, right? He did it with 2 extra games, and I think a lot of those, I think if they were intending on breaking that record earlier, they could. But there's a lot of times late in games that Dylan Gabriel wasn't trying to throw touchdown passes. Oregon was trying to run the clock down, and Oregon kneeled in victory formation instead of scoring. So I don't mind that so much. I mean, Dylan Gabriel has done what Dylan Gabriel has done his whole career. And to get that mark, I think just shows you how good of a quarterback he really is. I think it's going to be a travesty that Dylan Gabriel may lead the Oregon Ducks to a perfect record and not win the Heisman because of teams that run up the score. And I think that's kind of a sad thing that you have the career touchdown leader, a guy that's leading his team, a guy that has one of the highest efficiencies in the nation, and it doesn't look as flashy because he just does what he does, and it doesn't look like he's putting out a ton of effort because he's so good. But I think that in itself shows that he should be, the best quarterback at the Heisman. Just my opinion. Maybe I'm wearing green and yellow glasses, but his career statistics speaks for themselves. Dylan Gabriel and the Oregon Ducks at 10-0 speaks for itself. I don't think that with another quarterback, Oregon is 10-0. I think Dylan Gabriel is the man that has guided them there and has done really well and settled in and led this team. So, with that, we'll move on here. We got Noah Whittington. So Jordan James apparently suffered a slight injury. I don't think it's anything serious, but they didn't really disclose what it was. They said he was available to play. They just didn't use him. So that's interesting. That's something to keep an eye on. But Noah Whittington had his best game this week out of the whole year so far, by far. 13 carries for 77 yards, 5.9 average. And he had that long of 28. But I just think that this was by far his best game. He looked very patient. His vision looked really good. The cuts he was making looked real strong. I think this is the upward trajectory of Noah Whittington, and I am really happy to see that. And then your second leading rusher is Jordan Birch. Has 1 carry for 36 yards. on the fake punt for the first down in the third quarter that led to Oregon. I forgot now, maybe their first touchdown in the third quarter this year. I really can't remember if they scored another one. I know they were averaging 1 point per third quarter. I know we covered that last week, but I just forgot already. But it was good to see Oregon score in the third quarter and then again in the fourth quarter a couple of times. And, like Dan Lanning, he pulled out all the stops to get that, right? He pulls out the fake punt. He pulls out the pass to the freshman backup tackle. And then he has your other starting guard the other starting offensive lineman running the 2-point conversion. I think that was to kickstart the energy of that team and to get them going again. Masterful coaching by Dan Lanning in this game. Just really good. Jordan James had 7 carries, 29 yards. I think maybe he had 1 carry in the second half and then he didn't play the rest of the game. Dylan Gabriel has 4 carries, 28 yards, 7 average for 19 long. Jaden Lamar had 6 carries for 10 yards. So the receiving, man, that's a very small list for what we're used to seeing, right? Evan Stewart catches 6 for 55 yards, 9.2 average. Terrence Ferguson catches 6, 35 yards for 5.8 average. Trayshawn Holden catches 2 for 30 yards. I know he got hurt and came back in. I'm hoping it was maybe just a bruised thigh and not anything serious, because all they did was put a pad on his thigh and then send him back in. So hopefully it's nothing serious. Hopefully he'll be at full strength next week. Then we got Justice Lowe, 4 catches for 30 yards, 7.5 average. Jordan James, 2 catches for 27. Jamoris Wilson gets his first catch for 3 yards and a touchdown. And that was such a masterful play. He was so wide open. Nobody got that. Perfect pass, perfect catch. And it's good to see them linemen getting scores. They all celebrate with the big man there anyway. So Kenyon Sadiq has 2 receptions for 3 yards. I don't think they used him very much like I was hoping they would. Evan Stewart has that 1 fumble on the punt. Let's see. And so, okay. This week, I really concentrated on watching the defense. And all I kept seeing was Kobe Savage, like a missile coming in. He had 9 tackles, 6 solo. And, man, he was just flying at full speed like a rocket, homing in on people. And tell me there's a better name for a football player on defense than Kobe Savage. I mean, that guy hit that hit he put on that wide receiver. And then I think maybe some of them drops on those Maryland receivers that they were up looking for if Kobe Savage is about to crush him when they were trying to catch those balls. But I thought the defense played pretty well, other than, the secondary being very handsy. But like I said, I'm okay with the penalties if you're going to give up a big play. Might as well just give up that and prevent the touchdown. So, the standings. Indiana Hoosiers, also 10-0 for the first time ever in their history. The Oregon Ducks are 10-0 for the third time in their history. You have Ohio State sitting at 8-1 and Penn State sitting at 8-1. Both of those losses are to conference opponents. Of course, Buckeyes lost to Oregon and Penn State lost to Ohio State. So Penn State is pretty much out of the conference title game. I don't think there's a path for them to even get in. So yeah, not with the amount of games left. Let's see. I think Oregon has locked in their They got 2 games left. I think they have locked in. I think way this plays out. No. I think they have to win one of the last 2, and Oregon is guaranteed a spot in the Big Ten title game. Indiana still has to play the Buckeyes, so we'll see how that shake out. So here is Indiana's. They have a bye week, and then they go to Ohio State, and that's a huge advantage for Indiana to solely concentrate on Ohio State for 2 weeks. They beat Michigan in their first real struggle game, but they still came out with a victory in the end. So congratulations to Indiana there. But yeah, they got a bye week, and then they go to Ohio State, and then they finish with Purdue. We look at Ohio State. They got 3 games left. They go at Northwestern this week. And, they better not be looking too far forward to Indiana. I know Northwestern isn't the greatest team, but as you saw with Maryland and Oregon, that those teams want to knock you off. It'll make their season, and so they will try everything they can to get that victory. So if Ohio State isn't disciplined enough and they're looking ahead, that could be a struggle game for them. And then they finish at Michigan, that being a rival game. And Michigan looking like maybe they started to figure some things out. I thought their defense played really well. It's just Michigan's just offense just needs a lot of help. So, all right. So let's take a look at the rankings here. You got Oregon number 1. You got Ohio State number 2. Georgia will fall out. Miami will fall out. You probably have Texas at number 3. Penn State at number 4, Tennessee at number 5, Indiana at number 6, BYU at number 7, Notre Dame at number 8, Alabama number 9, and then I think you start seeing Miami and Georgia. Just because I don't. It's hard to say how far they're gonna drop Georgia and Miami, but Miami's lost to an unranked, and them struggling really every single game and having come from behind finally caught up to them. I think now in this part of the season that you got to reward those teams that are undefeated, and you got to reward those teams that took an early loss have been winning since. Taking a late loss should hurt more because you should be getting better as the year goes. So for me, I think a late loss should hurt more and you should drop a little farther. Georgia, with their second loss, is effectively taking them out of the SEC title game. I think because of that, Alabama should be ranked ahead of Georgia now because Alabama and Texas look to be the 2 teams headed for the SEC title game. And then, of course, you got BYU, who controversial call, beat Utah, but a holding is a holding, and sometimes I don't know, there's been some really bad calls, or I should say missed calls. There's been some really bad missed calls across the Big Ten and in games this year, and I don't necessarily fault as much a call. Like if you get a holding call or a pass interference call, and it most likely it was warranted, right? If you did that, they're not just gonna blanketly call something. And so the Utah wide receiver was holding the BYU guy, and that's just holding, right? It just is the way it is, and so. I know Utah was upset that call because they thought they could have won the game with that, but the simple fact is don't hold. I mean, the thing about that too is that holding on the edge had no relevance to that play. And that's kind of the thing is they didn't need to hold, but they were. So there's that. All right. So Oregon next week goes to Wisconsin. I wonder what the weather of that game should be. Oregon has a 75% chance to get that win, apparently. And game time weather, Madison clear 44. Good. I was hoping it wasn't going to be all snowy there, because I think that would have affected Oregon a little more. But who's to say they're not getting snow yet? No, they are not getting snow yet, so that's good. All right, so hopefully they have really good weather in Wisconsin. It might be a little chilly, but no snow. That bodes well for Oregon and their game. And Oregon looking to go 11-0 before the bye week. So hope to see that come out. Hope to see Oregon a lot more focused next week, because they can't play another game like Maryland. This is not the time to go backwards in your discipline and focus. But I think Dan Lanning will explain it to these kids. I think he'll have them ready to play. And with that, we are getting out here today. Much love all. We will catch you next time.